There is a side of female psychology most men never see. Not because women are impossible to understand, but because the most powerful women rarely reveal everything they're thinking. She may smile at you while quietly evaluating you. She may seem completely independent while secretly wanting emotional closeness. She may tell you she is fine when something you did changed the way she sees you. And sometimes, the woman who appears the hardest to read is actually the woman who is paying the closest attention. But here's where it gets interesting. The things she keeps private aren't always secrets. Sometimes they're feelings. Sometimes they're standards. Sometimes they're desires. And sometimes, they're decisions she has already made about you. You just haven't realized it yet. Because attraction doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't always come with a confession. It doesn't always look like constant texting. Sometimes attraction is hidden behind restraint, behind observation, behind silence, behind the simple question, is this man actually worth letting into my world? And if you understand that question, you begin to understand a much deeper side of female psychology. In this video, we're breaking down 5 things powerful, confident women often keep private in relationships and attraction. And the 5th one is especially important because it explains why a woman can be attracted to you and still walk away. So listen carefully. Because once you understand these 5 things, you'll stop obsessing over every text message, every delayed reply, every change in her mood, and you'll start paying attention to something much more powerful: patterns. Here's something most people don't realize. When you're trying to impress someone, you're usually focused on what you're saying. But the other person may be focused on how you behave. That's a completely different game. You say you're confident. She notices how you react when someone disagrees with you. You say you're kind. She notices how you treat people who can't give you anything. You say you're loyal. She notices how you talk about people when they're not around. You say you're emotionally mature. She notices what happens when you're angry. And you say, I respect women. She watches whether you actually respect her boundaries. This is why powerful women don't always need to ask 100 questions. Sometimes, they simply observe. And observation is powerful because people can control their words. It's much harder to control your patterns. Anyone can behave perfectly for one evening. Anyone can send the perfect message. Anyone can say, I'm not like other guys. But eventually, the performance ends, and behavior takes over. This is where attraction becomes psychological. Because attraction isn't only, do I find this person attractive? It can also become, do I feel safe enough to trust this person? That's a completely different question. And trust isn't created by one impressive conversation. It's created through repetition. You show up when you say you'll show up. You communicate when something goes wrong. You respect a boundary even when you don't like it. You don't become cruel because you're disappointed. You don't suddenly change personality when you don't get your way. Those little moments matter. And here's the part people often misunderstand. If a woman becomes quieter, it doesn't automatically mean she's losing interest. Sometimes she's simply processing. She's watching. She's asking herself questions she may never say aloud. Is he consistent? Can I trust him? Does he respect me? Is this confidence real? How does he behave when things don't go his way? And the last question is enormous. Because anyone can be charming when everything is going perfectly. Character becomes visible when reality becomes inconvenient. So if you're trying to understand female psychology, don't only pay attention to what happens when she's impressed. Pay attention to what happens when she's uncertain. Because that's where the real information begins. And this brings us to something even deeper, because behind that confidence you see on the outside, there may be a vulnerability she doesn't show almost anyone. Imagine meeting a woman who seems completely confident. She's successful. She speaks clearly. She knows what she wants. She doesn't chase validation. She doesn't need constant reassurance. You might look at her and think, nothing can hurt her. But that's one of the biggest mistakes you can make. Confidence doesn't mean you don't have vulnerabilities. Sometimes confidence means, I know who gets access to mine. That's different. A powerful woman may have fears. She may fear rejection. She may fear betrayal. She may fear becoming emotionally attached to someone who doesn't value her. She may fear giving someone access, only to discover that access was a mistake. But she may never tell you. Why? Because vulnerability is powerful, but only when it is placed in safe hands. Think about that. When someone tells you something deeply personal, they aren't simply giving you information. They're giving you responsibility. And this is where emotionally intelligent relationships separate themselves from manipulative ones. If she tells you about something that hurt her, don't store it as ammunition. Don't bring it back during an argument. Don't use it to create insecurity. Don't intentionally press the wound because you know it works. Instead, make the person feel safer for having trusted you. Because attraction can be physical, but emotional intimacy is built through psychological safety. And here's something fascinating. Sometimes a woman doesn't become more emotionally open because you asked her to. She becomes more open because your behavior repeatedly tells her, "You are safe with me." That's why patience matters. You can't demand intimacy. You can't force vulnerability. You can't interrogate someone into trusting you. Trust develops slowly, through consistency, through listening, through respect. And when a powerful woman finally starts revealing parts of herself that she normally protects, don't underestimate that moment. Because the value isn't in the information. The value is in the access. She's saying, "I'm allowing you to see something most people don't." And that's far more meaningful than 100 shallow compliments. But here's where things get even more interesting. Because sometimes the same woman who secretly enjoys your presence will work extremely hard not to appear dependent on it. And that's number 3. Let's talk about something people misunderstand constantly: attention versus dependence. A woman can genuinely enjoy your attention without needing it to feel valuable. She can look forward to your message. She can enjoy your voice. She can remember something random you said 3 weeks ago. She can wonder what you're doing. She can smile when your name appears on her phone. And still, she might not make it obvious. Why? Because liking someone and losing yourself in someone are completely different experiences. Healthy attraction can sound like, "I really enjoy being around you." Unhealthy dependence can sound like, "I don't know who I am without you." Those are not the same. And powerful women often protect their independence because they understand the difference. They have their own goals, their own friends, their own routines, their own identity. So if she doesn't respond instantly every time, don't automatically create a psychological story around it. Maybe she's busy. Maybe she's living her life. Maybe she's simply not glued to her phone. And here's a very important point: real attraction doesn't require constant proof. When someone genuinely likes you, look for patterns instead. Does she make time? Does she initiate sometimes? Does she remember details? Does she ask questions? Does she seem interested in your life? Does she willingly spend time with you? Does she communicate consistently? These signals tell you much more than one delayed text. Because people who become obsessed with tiny signals often miss the bigger picture. They see, "She took 3 hours to reply," and completely ignore, "She has consistently made time to see me for the last 2 months." That's backwards. Look at the pattern, not the isolated moment. And here's another attraction principle. You don't need to create artificial scarcity to become valuable. You don't need to intentionally ignore someone. You don't need to make them jealous. You don't need to disappear for 3 days just to make them wonder. That's not emotional strength. Real value comes from having a life that doesn't revolve around whether somebody texts you back. You can be interested without becoming desperate. You can care without losing yourself. You can desire someone without trying to control them. And ironically, that emotional stability can make relationships healthier and more attractive. But now we reach the point where attraction alone stops being enough. Because a woman can genuinely like you and still decide, no. Why? Because of number 4. Here's a truth many people discover too late. Attraction does not guarantee compatibility. You can have chemistry. You can have incredible conversations. You can laugh together. You can feel an intense connection. And still, you may not be right for each other. A powerful woman understands this. She doesn't necessarily ask, "Does this person want me?" She may also ask, "Do I actually want this person in my life?" That's a completely different question. And it changes everything. Because when someone has strong self-respect, they don't measure their value by how badly someone else wants them. They evaluate whether the relationship actually fits their life. Can we communicate? Can we disagree respectfully? Can we solve problems? Can we trust each other? Can we maintain boundaries? Can we grow together? Does this relationship bring peace or constant confusion? These standards aren't always announced. Sometimes they're simply observed. A woman may never give you a speech about what she expects. She may just watch your behavior. And if your behavior repeatedly contradicts her values, she may quietly step back. This is why some men become shocked when a woman leaves. They say, "But everything was going so well." From their perspective, maybe it was. But perhaps she had been noticing things they never noticed. Small disrespect, broken promises, inconsistent behavior, emotional volatility, lack of accountability, constant jealousy, poor communication. Maybe none of these things caused one giant explosion. Maybe they simply accumulated. One moment, then another, until attraction could no longer compensate for incompatibility. And that's a powerful lesson. Because sometimes people don't lose attraction in one dramatic moment. Sometimes attraction slowly changes because of repeated experiences. That's why you shouldn't ask only, "How do I make her attracted to me?" Ask, "What kind of person am I consistently becoming?" Because eventually, your patterns become your reputation. And your reputation becomes the experience people have of you. Now here's where the fifth secret becomes incredibly important. Because after watching you, after protecting her vulnerability, after experiencing your attention, after measuring your standards, she eventually reaches a conclusion. And she doesn't always announce it. This is the one most people misunderstand. Sometimes attraction doesn't disappear with a dramatic argument. Sometimes it changes quietly. A little less communication. A little less excitement. A little less openness. A little less effort. Or the opposite. More questions. More time together. More trust. More openness. More invitations into her world. More consistency. The important thing is this: people communicate through patterns. And powerful women may not always explain every internal decision they're making. They may simply change their behavior. That's why chasing an explanation for every little thing can make you miss what's actually happening. Instead, zoom out. Look at the relationship over time. Has communication become easier? Has trust increased? Does she voluntarily make space for you? Does she seem comfortable being herself? Does she respect you? Do you respect her? Are you both moving closer, or are you constantly trying to convince each other to stay? Those questions tell you much more. And here's the uncomfortable truth: sometimes a woman can be attracted to you and still decide not to pursue the relationship. That doesn't mean attraction was fake. It means attraction isn't the only factor. Timing matters. Compatibility matters. Values matter. Emotional maturity matters. Life circumstances matter. And sometimes, two people can genuinely like each other and still not be right together. That's not failure. That's reality. And if you understand that, you stop treating relationships like a competition. You stop thinking, "How can I make her chase me?" And start asking, "Can we actually choose each other freely?" That's a much healthier form of attraction. The psychology most people miss. Now let's connect everything. The first thing, she may watch your behavior more than she listens to your promises. The second, she may protect her vulnerability until trust has been earned. The third, she may enjoy your attention without becoming dependent on it. The fourth, she may have standards she doesn't constantly announce. And the fifth, she may quietly decide whether you belong in her life based on the pattern you create. Notice something? None of these require manipulation. None require mind games. None require pretending not to care. And none require learning some secret trick that controls female attraction. Because real psychology doesn't work like a magic formula. Women aren't a single category of people with one universal operating system. Every person has different experiences, attachment patterns, values, preferences, and boundaries. So the goal isn't to decode women. The goal is to understand people better. And perhaps most importantly, to understand yourself. Because here's the uncomfortable question: what does your behavior communicate when you're not trying to impress anyone? Who are you when she says no? Who are you when you don't receive attention? Who are you when you're jealous? Who are you when you're disappointed? Who are you when nobody is watching? That's where character lives. And that's where long-term attraction becomes much more meaningful. So if you're watching this because you want to become more attractive, don't leave this video thinking, I need to become more mysterious. That's not the lesson. Don't think, I should ignore her. That's not the lesson. Don't think, I need to make her jealous. Definitely not. The real lesson is much simpler. Become difficult to replace because of who you are, not because of psychological games. Build a life you respect. Develop emotional control. Learn how to communicate. Have standards. Respect other people's standards. Become comfortable with rejection. Become comfortable with uncertainty. And stop measuring your worth by somebody else's attention. Because confidence isn't, everyone wants me. Confidence is, I know who I am even when someone doesn't choose me. That's powerful. And ironically, that's also one of the healthiest foundations for attraction. Maybe you've experienced this before. You met someone, and you wanted to know exactly what she was thinking. Why did she become distant? Why did she suddenly open up? Why did she seem interested one day and uncertain the next? Why did she choose you? Why did she walk away? And you kept searching for one perfect explanation. But human attraction rarely works that way. It's not one moment. It's thousands of moments. One conversation. One boundary. One act of kindness. One broken promise. One moment of vulnerability. One moment of respect. One moment where someone realizes, I feel safe with this person. And sometimes, one moment where they realize, I don't. That's why the most important thing isn't learning how to manipulate someone's emotions. It's learning how to create relationships where both people can be honest. Where attraction doesn't require games. Where confidence doesn't require arrogance. Where independence doesn't mean emotional distance. And where vulnerability doesn't become a weakness. Because the strongest relationship isn't built when one person successfully controls the other. It's built when two people freely choose each other. So remember these 5 things. 1. She may be watching more than she's saying. 2. Her confidence doesn't mean she has no vulnerabilities. 3. She may value your attention without depending on it. 4. Her standards may be revealed through her decisions, not her speeches. 5. She may already be forming an opinion about whether you belong in her life. And if you remember only one thing from this entire video, remember this. Don't try to become the man a woman cannot manipulate. Become the man who doesn't need to manipulate her. That's a completely different level of confidence. Because attraction built on fear eventually becomes exhausting. Attraction built on games eventually becomes confusing. But attraction built on trust, respect, confidence, curiosity, and genuine compatibility has something much stronger behind it. It has a foundation. So the next time you're trying to understand what a woman feels, don't obsess over one text. Don't analyze one emoji. Don't panic over one quiet evening. Look at the pattern. Look at the consistency. Look at the way she treats you. And look at the way you treat her. Because sometimes, the answer isn't hidden in what she says. It's sitting quietly, inside everything she repeatedly does. And once you understand that, you stop chasing hidden signals. You start understanding human behavior. And that's when attraction psychology becomes much more than a game. It becomes self-awareness. If this video made you see relationships differently, subscribe to Mind Decode, because on this channel, we don't just look at what people do. We decode why they do it.